Good evening. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm Jaleesa Dugro, and here are the stories we're following tonight.
We're locked and loaded and ready to go.
14 days into this latest escalation of violence in the Middle East, President Trump says the U.S. is locked and loaded. So what happens next? We'll find out. Plus, while the world's attention stays on Iran, a different conflict continues to unfold inside Lebanon. New sanctions, new consequences. Europe is turning up the pressure on Russia, but some warn the biggest cost may fall on Europe itself. On this show, we know that you don't need more content, you need context. Anyone can tell you what's happening in the news. Tonight, we hope to help you understand why it's happening, and how it affects you. This is America Now. Tonight, strikes are continuing in the Middle East. The Saudis have struck sites in Yemen in the Houthi city of Hodeidah, and President Trump's and our president doesn't seem to have the strategy to stop the violence. Instead, it sounds more like he's ready to continue.
Right now, look, there are two ways. I consider that the smarter way, but the other is probably the easier way, doing what we're doing. And we can take that to a much higher level if we want to. You know, we're prepared to do that. As you know, we're locked and loaded. We're locked and loaded and ready to go.
It's an important soundbite that you should hear, especially now as we enter the 14th day of continuous strikes between the U.S. and Iran. Strikes all meant to bring Tehran to the negotiating table. But when asked if he has a plan for all of this to end, Trump still says that there are many options for diplomacy.
There's a military exit where we just keep going just the way we are, and we can even make it a heavier dose, and it's knocking out everything they have. Or there's a smarter strategy, and that's you make a deal. And they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet, but they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys, but they do want to make a deal. There's two ways. I mean, it's you can just keep doing exactly what we're doing and take them apart piece by piece. We could do it in a more rapid fashion, which we might do, or we can negotiate with them, which we're also doing right now. I mean, as we speak, we're talking to them.
Right. So he says you can just get out of the war, which he hasn't done, or the U.S. can take Iran apart piece by piece. But the thing is, you can't have the best of both worlds, right? Trump today still believes that you can keep escalating and still expect diplomacy to be underway, which explains a recent New York Times report saying President Trump met with the Iraqi prime minister and sent him back to Iraq with a secret request to Iran to start negotiating again. Iran, of course, rejected the offer. So how does the president's base feel about all of this? Well, Fox News anchors were practically foaming at the mouth, asking where the United States should bomb inside of Iran next.
All right, so let's take a look at the power plants and places that we might be able to hit. Lucas, as you see these as targets, what do you think we might hit first?
Well, I don't know if we'll hit it first, but the Damavad plant supplies 40% of Tehran's electricity. The Bashir nuclear power plant, probably not likely a target. The Russians built this. They still supply Iran with low-enriched uranium.
Because, Lucas, we should say there's a risk to blowing up a nuclear plant.
There's no question.
It's like kids in a candy shop. What do you think we might hit first? They're discussing bombing civilian infrastructure like we're picking targets off of a map in a video game. It's like they've forgotten that Iran can strike back. One of the most dramatic developments is unfolding in northern Iraq. Iranian drones have been pounding U.S. positions in Iraqi Kurdistan, specifically America's main base in Erbil. Here's a video released by the IRGC showing the moment they launched those strikes. We've heard reports online of Patriot defense systems being targeted as well, damaged across the base, and possibly even deaths. Now, these deaths, they haven't been confirmed, but it does give you an idea of where things are headed. The reality of this war is things are a lot worse off than we've been told. American officials are fudging the numbers. Take reports from the Pentagon, right? They quietly lowered the official American death toll from this war from 18 to 14. Those names are the same foreign service members who were killed over the weekend during the strikes. The Pentagon says, though, that those names are no longer a part of the official casualty count because those deaths occurred before the April ceasefire declaration. I mean, that's not a mistake. When the body count shrinks on the same day that bombs continue to fall, people are going to wonder how this war is being presented to the public and how honest our government is being. Now, it's important to note that those strikes were not isolated strikes. Iran is sending a clear message that it's willing to hit American forces directly on Iraqi soil. And the strain is showing in American arsenal. Tonight, we're learning the U.S. Army has placed an order with Raytheon for a series of Patriot interceptors that have not been ordered in more than 30 years. Think about that. We're having to dig into an older stock because so many of the newer, more advanced missiles have already been used up fighting this war. Meanwhile, President Trump is warning Russia and China not to assist Iran in its war effort. So, taken together, all of these developments, we point to a war that is no longer confined or isolated by these strikes. Instead, the fighting is spreading across multiple theaters, Iraq, Jordan, the Persian Gulf, while drawing in regional partners, air defense systems, and critical military infrastructure. Like we've warned for months, right? This is all part of the escalation trap that we mentioned. The cycle when each side responds to each other's actions with increasingly larger and more consequential attacks. It makes de-escalation difficult. It pushes peace further out of reach. And based on today's events, the region now appears to be entering what many are describing as stage 3 of that escalation trap, where the conflict is now expanding geographically, strategically, and risk of much broader regional war is rising significantly. Joining us now is former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off first with asking, how serious are the latest Iran strikes on Jordan, Iraq, and Kuwait?
Well, those strikes happen to be very, very serious, and they're going to probably become even more intense. Every time the United States strikes, Iran will ratchet it up. It's still a tit for tat, but every time it's one notch up. What I'm envisioning is a possibility, and I've spoken to some Iranians about this, that they may actually have some of the popular mobilization forces out of Iraq come on down and actually take over Kuwait, because the United States has been hitting that base. The United States has moved out a lot of the military personnel and equipment from the lead base, which isn't very far from the Iranian border. It's about 100 kilometers. And also the fact, too, that Iran will also begin hitting infrastructures in the GCC countries even more intensely than it has been if the United States continues hitting its infrastructures. And that could actually affect and shut down those countries. No water, no desalination, no electricity. People in 110, 115 degree heat with high humidity, will not be able to even survive. So there's that possibility. And what it could also do, and I think this is one of the things the Iranians are looking at, is that in Bahrain, it's 80% Shia. They're thinking that maybe Shia will rise up and actually take over that country in Bahrain. The other possibility is the eastern province in Saudi Arabia, which is a Shia-controlled province where much of the oil production for Saudi Arabia takes place. But ironically, it's predominantly Shia. So that's a possibility. You're also seeing in Yemen, Saudi Arabia continuing to attack Yemeni forces, and as they did today. And the other ominous thing that's occurring is that the Pakistanis have warned the Yemenis not to continue the attack because they're of a Pakistani-Saudi defense agreement that was signed in 2025, in which Pakistan is talking about possibly committing military to Yemen. Again, my Iranian sources said if that happens, if Pakistan gets into this battle to attack the Yemenis, Iran will respond and attack Pakistan. So what we're seeing here is the prospect of this getting so out of control that it will go region wide, and then who contains it? And this is becoming more and more ominous by the day. So what Trump is contemplating is whatever decision he makes is going to have a long-term impact on the region.
There are definitely a lot of moving parts and a lot of actors there. I would say in agreement that the Gulf countries are kind of between a rock and a hard place right now. Do you think that the United States can defend the Gulf countries for much longer? We've already seen them be under significant attack and sustain heavy damage due to Iranian airstrikes.
Well, they've already failed. The bases are virtually useless. Half the bases have been vacated. There's some 34 of them. They were virtually vacated. The other ones, particularly in Kuwait and Jordan, are under intense fire. Even into Iraq and into Erbil, as you point out. So the U.S. is in a defensive mode. All of our stuff is exposed on the surface. Where do you hide the F-35s? Jordan is also being attacked. So where do you hide this stuff? It's actually forcing the United States now to move its forces back further and further, which makes it even more logistically difficult for the United States to undertake a consistent and persistent attack on Iran, because the aircraft have to be refueled. And one thing that could happen is and here's another thing that's now occurring. Apparently in Israel tonight, people are bunkering in for the possibility of everything going full blast. And they're opening up shelters and what have you. It's just conceivable that Israel intends to attack if the United States decides to undertake its attack. So there's that prospect. And you see Netanyahu running to the United States to meet with Trump on Tuesday. And every time he talks to Netanyahu, something happens. And so that's what I'm concerned about. And if that occurs, the Iranians then will strike the Iranians will strike Israel, and particularly the bases where we have a lot of refuelers parked at Ben Gurion, and they're all out in the open. The Iranians could hit those refuelers and cripple the U.S. Power projection capabilities tremendously.
So, last question here, because we're running out of time. Do you foresee the U.S. putting boots on the ground in one of the Persian Gulf islands or mainland of Iran itself, and what would that look like?
I don't envision it. I think it would be a disaster if they even attempted it. There's very little way that they could undertake that, given how to bring in troops, how do you support them, and what would they do? And they would be sitting ducks. Because the Iranians are anticipating just that.
Michael Maloof, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And over to England, where a massive explosion has taken place in the east of the country in Essex. According to the latest reports, a fire triggered a massive explosion of fertilizer at an industrial site. The explosion has devastated surrounding buildings and vehicles. Local reports say the explosion sounded like a bomb or a loud sonic boom. The fire is expected to continue burning for some time, and no report yet on the number of casualties or if the fire was intentionally set. All right, now let's turn our focus to Lebanon, where we're continuing to see IDF soldiers occupy large parts of countries in the southern region of Lebanon. RT Steve Sweeney filed this update.
Well, we're here in the South Lebanese village of Zalta al-Gharbia. This is one of the villages that was named in these controversial so-called pilot zones. These are areas where the Lebanese army is supposed to enter and the Israeli soldiers are set to withdraw from as part of this staged withdrawal from the whole of the south of Lebanon. Now, it sits very, very close to the yellow line, just outside it, in fact. And as we've arrived here, what we've seen are rows and rows of cars, people pitched up on the side of the road, and they're gathering, just waiting to be allowed to enter the village. They haven't been able to do so far. They've been here since Monday, so they've been here for a number of days. In fact, when the Lebanese army itself entered the village under the terms of the controversial framework agreement, the trilateral agreement signed between the United States, Israel and Lebanon, they came under fire from the Israeli Defense Forces. And on Wednesday, the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, well, he made a surprise visit to the village. He entered the village, he raised the Lebanese flag, and he gave a speech which we can listen to now.
From the outset, we have always stated that our objective is the complete withdrawal of Israel from all our territory. What we are witnessing today is only the beginning, but we are determined and unwavering, and we will continue to mobilize all our political and diplomatic efforts to secure a total withdrawal from Lebanese territory. I would like to emphasize that the return to normal life in southern Lebanon is not merely a slogan, but a national objective to which the government is fully committed. The return of our people to their land is the most authentic expression of Lebanon's unity and sovereignty.
While Salam entered freely, a visit some suggest was coordinated with Israel, the villagers waited patiently outside, drones hovering overhead and Israeli soldiers ready and waiting. Many we spoke to were angered and frustrated that the Prime Minister failed to stop and speak to them.
I was here when Prime Minister Nawaf Salam came. The people felt sadness and despair. The Prime Minister is supposed to be among his people, comforting the families who have lost everything. We have no problem with him entering Zatar, but the problem is that he entered while we, the villagers, couldn't return to our homes. He stood and planted the Lebanese flag, which we are proud of, the flag of our country, but the way he did it was unacceptable. He apologized to the people later, and his apologies accepted. We felt betrayed. We are the rightful owners of this land, and we are the ones who have sacrificed and given so much to it. We are the ones who should be entering the village and planting the Lebanese flag.
It's upsetting that he entered so secretly and left so quickly. We had hoped to meet him and welcome him. The difficult thing is that the Prime Minister, who is supposed to be a role model and a source of hope for the citizens, chose to enter and leave in this way. He should have stood with us, checked on our well-being, and given us hope that the things would improve. I think it would have been better if he had postponed his visit until after the residents had returned.
Some considered the visit an insult to the villagers. Do you agree?
Yes, I somewhat agree, because the Prime Minister was supposed to stand with his people and give them hope.
Even local leadership was in the dark. The mayor claims the state has never contacted him. He discovered his own village was a pilot zone by watching TV.
No one contacted us at all about this. There has been so much talk about Zatar al-Gharbia being a pilot zone, yet we still haven't been able to enter it, and the talk of a complete Israeli withdrawal continues. If things stay as they are, it means Israel will remain there for a long time. Frankly, we weren't informed of the visit beforehand. Yesterday I saw a large convoy of the Lebanese army. I wondered to myself what was happening. Was there some kind of security incident? Then I saw people were upset, and they told me that the Prime Minister had been there and then left. I gave an interview to the media and mentioned this. The Prime Minister heard the interview and called me. He expressed his admiration for what I said. However, he then apologized to me as the mayor and to the residents, explaining that he hadn't informed us of the visit beforehand and that he couldn't stay in the village and communicate with the residents due to the security situation.
As the villagers wait, they see footage of the destruction of their homes circulating on social media.
We've been waiting for 3 days, hoping to enter the village soon and return to our homes, even though they're destroyed. We see pictures on social media showing that 80% of the villagers' houses are completely destroyed and the remaining 20% are uninhabitable. The trees are dead, the land has been bulldozed, everything is dead in this country. I want to return to my home and try to live in it despite its destruction.
Later on Thursday, Army Chief Rudolf Haikal entered the village to assess the situation. Yet for all the high-level visits, nothing changes for the locals. They are still waiting for official approval just to return to their own land. Well, the pilot zones themselves have proved incredibly controversial. The three named in this first phase includes Tarifa, Froun and Zautar al-Gharbia, where we are now. However, those areas, well, they all sit outside the yellow line, and none of them have been occupied by Israeli soldiers in the first place. Now, it would be a mistake to think that they're just random villages chosen on a map. What they do is they link Bint Jbeil district to Nabatea district, in particular to the Ali al-Taher hills, which is a strategic hills that the Israelis have been fighting very hard to gain control of. They've been unable to do so far. However, the bombing in and around that area has continued. In fact, it's intensified over the past 2 days, especially in areas such as Kafar Tebnit, where there have been airstrikes and demolitions. And now all of this comes as the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has concluded his visit to Washington, where he met the US President Donald Trump in the White House. Now, some have been very critical of that visit. They've said that this puts the Lebanese state well and truly in the hands of the American administration, an American administration that, let's not forget, has backed Israel to the hilt and in fact has supplied many of the bombs and the weapons that have caused the destruction across southern Lebanon. Now, Aoun said, well, he's pushing for this full and total withdrawal of Israeli troops from southern Lebanon. Whether that happens and what timescale it happens over, if indeed it does, remains to be seen. This is Steve Sweeney for RT, Zautar al-Gharbia, southern Lebanon.
Now to Europe, where a new sanctions package has been announced against Russia. Some say the policy may impact Russia's economy. Others say it undermines Europe's very own interests. RT's Rachel Marsden explains.
We have agreed on the 21st sanctions package against Russia. It delivers sweeping measures targeting Moscow's financial system, its military-industrial complex and energy sector that keep Russia's war economy running. We're hitting Putin where it hurts most, cutting off the financial lifelines he relies on to sustain his war. This is not the end of the road on sanctions. We're already working on the next steps. The EU must be ready to respond to any further Russian escalation.
Ooh, a 21st swipe at Russia from the EU, and apparently not the last either, because there's always a next step. There has to be. Otherwise, someone might ask what the first 20 or 21 now did. Meanwhile, inside the EU, each new sanctions round now follows a really familiar ritual. First, you have the show of unity in public, while there's lots of arguing in the kitchen where they're cooking these sanctions up. And also word leaking out in the Western press of a growing list of countries asking, just to be clear, how much of this are we expected to absorb ourselves? This time, at least 6 countries question the logic of it all: Austria, Germany, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and France. So not exactly fringe voices there. Greece in particular, its prime minister was ready to flip over the table and block the entire package unless Athens got what it wanted. The issue? Russian liquefied natural gas. Now, more specifically, who gets to keep shipping it? Because Greece happens to control the world's largest merchant fleet. So when Brussels says, hey, let's restrict Russian gas flows, Athens hears, let's restrict a major part of the Greek economy. And unsurprisingly, enthusiasm for that was a little bit limited. But negotiations persisted. Of course, pressure was applied. And what do you know? A carve-out emerged, meaning that Greece got room to keep shipping Russian LNG outside of the EU after 2027. So veto disappeared, package was saved, unity was restored just in time for the group photo, and Greece sounding like it was having to defend common sense.
Europe should not end up surrendering entire sectors of economic activity or market share to non-EU players as an unintended consequence of its own sanctions policy. Sanctions should erode Russia's economic capacity, not create strategic windfalls for others at Europe's expense.
All right, so quick translation there. If Europe steps back and its economic rivals on the competitive global playing field step in to fill the void left by Europe, then you're not really punishing Russia so much as you're just switching yourself out as a supplier to your customers at your own expense. And the inability to grasp that basic logic is now making for some really batty statements coming from the EU, because once sanctions become your default go-to, as they have for the EU, then pretty much everything starts to look like a potential weapon, even fish. Yep. Here's the bloc's chief diplomat sounding like she's just discovered the potential for militarizing all-you-can-eat seafood buffets.
First on fish, I must say that before I was, in this job, I didn't know that fish are so geopolitical. Fish are really something that are hindering all important geopolitical processes.
Wow, yeah, weaponized fish, that's where we're heading. Then there's the issue of visas. France and Italy push back against banning entry for former Russian combatants, sounding like maybe they'll be up for revisiting it at some point down the road when it's someone else's problem. Austria has its own priorities. It threatened to veto new sanctions unless there was some movement on compensating its banking sector for its losses in Russia. And Bulgaria also intervened to remove Patriarch Kirill from the sanctions list. Well, the real story is not really the sanctions themselves anymore, but rather what they're doing to the EU itself as they all keep trying so desperately to agree.
And that's America Now. I'm Jalisa Dugro. For more stories, visit our website at rt.com and join us every night at 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you for watching and have a good night. And remember, question everything.